Once again, we're focused on the Sony a7R5. It has 8K video and it's got a reinvented autofocus system. And Sony Alpha Rumors says that all these specifications and more have been triple confirmed. Details coming up, but first, I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so you're kept informed on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. Wow, this is a really big day if you're a Sony Alpha fan. Andrea of Sony Alpha Rumors just leaked the a7R5 specs, and he says they've been triple confirmed, and the camera, the a7R5, will be announced October the 26th at 3 p.m. London time, 10 a.m. New York or Toronto time. You might have noticed that I'm wearing an old Def Leppard Hysteria t-shirt from what I think is one of their best albums from the early to mid 80s. I love that album. And the reason I'm wearing it is because when it comes to the Sony a7R5, there's an awful lot of hysteria. We can go back to May the 19th. Photo Rumors leaked a detailed set of specifications for the a7R5, and they look truly impressive. But as I looked a little closer, I thought, well, these specifications actually look like they were copied from the a7R4 and then updated for the a7R5. We had nothing that was validated, nothing since up until today. Andrea of Sony Alpha Rumors has released a set of specifications for the a7R5 that he says have been triple confirmed. Well, that sounds pretty positive, doesn't it? So why don't we go ahead, without further ado, and get to those leaked specifications. The first, the sensor. Okay, this one's been flip-flopping a lot. Now, those earlier leaked specifications from Photo Rumors said 61 megapixels, and then yesterday, Sony Alpha Rumors said 63 megapixels. We're back to 61 megapixels. So triple confirmed that the Sony a7R5 will have 61 megapixels. He didn't mention whether it was BSI or stacked, but it's 61 megapixels. But one thing that Andrea did say is that this new camera, and this is going back to Photo Rumors and what they were saying, it's going to have a lot more throughput. He didn't go into detail saying whether it was going to be double. He didn't say whether it was to do with the sensor, whether it was to do with the image processor, or a combination therein. But the processing power of this camera is going to be quite a bit improved over the a7R4. In the leaked Photo Rumors specifications, the full leaked specifications as they called it from May the 19th, the a7R5 was supposed to do 8K video at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, uncropped at 9.6K oversampled 8K, and all those basic frame rates. Sounded incredible. It sounded like basically a camera that could go right up against the A7, or not the A7, just the R5, the Canon R5. Well, it can do 8K video at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, but it's cropped. There's no mention of what the crop is, but it's definitely not oversampled. So is it good enough to compete up against the Canon EOS R5 or the Nikon Z9? Well, we really don't know. We don't know if it does RAW, we don't know if it does all-eye, and we don't know what kind of IPV specs that this camera will have. Now let's turn to 4K. It can do 4K at 24, 25, and 30 frames per second, as well as 50 and 60 frames per second. And the good news here, full sensor readout. So what that means is we can now get 9.6K oversample 4K, just not 8K, and again, that's uncropped. Sony Alpha Rumors is able to confirm that the Sony a7R5 will do S-Cinetone, and while there's no mention of S-Log2, S-Log3, or even HLG in today's leaked specifications, I wouldn't count that out. I'd be really surprised if the a7R5 doesn't have it, and more on that later. So video modes on the a7R5, which is what I consider primarily a stills camera, look pretty decent. But sadly, the frames per second, the continuous shooting frames per second, there was no mention of that. Previous rumors had said 10 frames per second, but at this point, we're left scratching our heads with 2 weeks away to try and find out whether this camera can do 10 frames per second, 12 frames per second, or something else. No surprises that the a7R5 has in-body image stabilization, but what's surprising is that Sony Alpha Rumors says it's capable of 8 stops of image stabilization, in-body image stabilization. Normally when camera companies report the level of IBIS, they're talking about the number of stops for the body. However, if you take a lens with image stabilization and attach it to that body, it's very plausible, very easy to actually get 8 stops of image stabilization. The Canon EOS R5, depending on the lens hooked up to it, can get anywhere from 5 stops to 9 stops of image stabilization. So do you think that we'll actually get 8 stops of image stabilization without the lens, and then a few more stops with the lens attached? I don't know. I think 8 stops overall is something to look forward to. The a7R5 is supposed to have a brand new reinvented autofocus system, and this is pretty impressive because Sony already has one of the best autofocus systems out there. If you're tracking people, pets, animals, birds, cars, planes, it does a pretty good job. But apparently this new autofocus system is being reinvented. It's using deep learning, and it's the best that Sony's ever brought out to a camera. In fact, the artificial intelligence, the deep learning aspects of this autofocus system, and yes, we've heard this before, deep learning, AI reinvented. We've heard this on Panasonic. We've heard this on the OM1. We've heard it from many others. Even Canon with the 1DX Mark III has deep learning, artificial-based intelligence in their autofocus system. Sony already has one of the best autofocus systems out there, so to have a reinvented system that's apparently better is good news. And is this just marketing? Well, according to Sony Alpha rumors, people who have been testing this camera are truly saying that yes, it is a big deal. It's a much improved camera over previous camera bodies. And this new autofocus system isn't going to be relegated to just the R5. All new cameras coming out are also going to have this new autofocus system, at least all new interchangeable lens cameras. Andrea went on further to say that the autofocus system is more than capable at tracking trains, planes, people. He did say insects, which is new. No other camera company has said that they can track insects, although I have tried with a Canon EOS R5 and I can get it to work, but it really depends on how close the insect is as to how well it does, and it's a bit of a hit and miss sometimes. So the Sony a7R5 can do insect eye detection. I'm just curious though. There's no mention of UFO or UAP detection. That would be something nice because we're still getting some pretty grainy photos of UFOs and UAPs, and there's no mention of boat detection. That might be a little tricky with all the water out there, but I don't know. Either way, the Sony a7R5 is shaping up to be quite an impressive camera with a brand new reinvented autofocus system that, based on testers, what they're telling us, it's dramatically improved. It's more useful, more versatile over the existing autofocus system. So what is the camera going to look like? Is it going to be as big as a Canon body? Well, no. But it is going to, well, here, imagine this, the a7S III and the a7 IV. Imagine they got together, bought a nice house, and settled down together and produced an offspring. If you're imagining that, and the camera that is, then that's probably what the a7R5 is going to look like. So what do you think of these specifications? We've definitely got more than we had this morning, but we still don't have nearly enough. We don't have as much detail. Now, Andrea did say it's got better dynamic range and better ISO performance, but there's no numbers given. It's good to have better low light performance. It's good to have better dynamic range, but I'd like to know how many stops. 14 plus stops, 15 plus stops, 16? Or are they going to go to the moon with 20 stops? No, they're definitely not going to do 20 stops. That's going to be relegated to their cinema line. But other specifications, codecs. I'm really curious to know what this camera is truly capable of. And for photographers, which I think is the primary market for this camera, we need to know more about still shooting. We need to know about continuous shooting in terms of high frame rates. Can it go north of 10 frames per second? Or are we stuck at 10 frames per second? And I shouldn't really say stuck at 10 frames per second. A camera with 61 megapixels with a lot of throughput, being able to put out 10 frames per second is rather significant. And with a brand new and improved autofocus system, wow, this is looking to be a pretty impressive camera. But if you want to stay up to date on the latest news and rumors regarding the Sony a7R5, as Sony Alpha Rumors has said, more specs are coming shortly. They're just trying to triple confirm or at least double confirm everything. So in the next couple of days, I would expect a lot more information on the Sony a7R5 as we come close to the announcement, the release on October the 26th at 3 p.m. London time or 10 a.m. Toronto and New York time. More specifications, more hype, more information. I'm looking forward to this. But if you want to stay up to date on the latest camera news and information, go ahead and click the subscribe button and make sure you choose all notifications, because by choosing all notifications, as soon as I publish a new video like this one here, and this is my third one today, YouTube will notify you that I put out a new video so you can stay up to date on the latest camera news and rumors. Instead of taking all your time to follow RSS feeds, Twitter feeds, all the websites regarding all the favorite cameras that you're following, as well as YouTube channels. I don't cover all camera news, but I do cover all camera bodies and all the latest and greatest information. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. In fact, I'm planning on doing a live stream today. The only question is, what time am I going to do that? I don't really know. I've got to edit and publish this video right now, which will probably come out at about, what time is it now? It's 12:36. Probably take me about 30 minutes to an hour to edit this. I'm off today, so I can take more time doing it. So I'll either do the live stream probably around 3 o'clock, or maybe I'll do it around 6 o'clock Eastern time, because there's an awful lot to talk about today. Of course, the a7R5, we just got leaked specifications of CR3 from Canon rumors on the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. And of course, we've got the Sony ZV-1F. Apparently, it's going to cap out at 24 and 25 frames per second in 4K. That can't be so, can it? So all that we're going to talk about in my live stream coming up later today, assuming the weather warming, well, we're getting a weather warning, and apparently that weather warning is calling for winds of 70 to 90 kilometers an hour. And when that happens, you don't know what can happen with power. Sometimes trees snap and come down on power lines, and well, that would definitely get in the way of doing a live stream. But all plans are I'm going to do a live stream later today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.